You look so motivated.
I'm so motivated. I'm actually really motivated because I have a new editing workstation that I just set up yesterday. So I'm like, when you get something new and you're like, I'm gonna do stuff now. So I'm
This is
excited.
so exciting. It's like a new
Yeah.
project that you want to take on and tackle. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody, welcome. This is Live with Liz and Ethan today. Ethan is, as you can see, feeling motivated and excited for today's talk, and also someone that I love and I'm so excited to bring on and for us to get to have some time together. We got to have a lot of time early on in quarantine when we were doing these frequently, and then things just kind of got busy. So I'm excited we're back. So let's say hi. So please say hi, introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, where you're joining from, so that we can not just say hi, but also answer questions that you might post along the way. It's not Liz. Thank you, Ethan. Okay, so a couple agenda items. So as always, just a quick reminder that this is not therapy. This is not intended to replace therapy, but is simply an educational opportunity for us to come together, learn, talk, and share our personal feedback. This is not intended to replace therapy and really should not. That you should do individually with your clinician at home. If you're feeling unsafe or suicidal, please call 911, go to your local emergency room, or call the suicide hotline. This is not a place to seek help if you're in crisis. So what we do for Live with Liz is a little bit different than some of our normal events, where we will have individuals submit questions in advance, and we always like to start with those, and then we move into questions that are live. So today's seminar is really about motivation, and Ethan and I are going to talk a little bit about why motivation is so critical, and in my opinion, why it's really the crux of whether or not treatment works. The reality is that if we are just going through the motions, or we're not totally bought in, or we're not kind of seeing that bigger purpose and reason for why we should engage in the treatment we're engaging in, that's often when we get stuck. It's often when we take steps back and we start to question why we should do the work that we do. So we have questions we'll start with, but first and foremost, we just want to say hi to everybody. It looks like we have so many joining from all over. Thank you guys for joining. And Ethan, you want to spend a second just kind of saying hi and talking about, I guess for you, one of my questions would be like, how important do you think motivation is in not just treatment when you first started, but now, and continuing treatment or relapse prevention?
For sure. So first of all, what's up, everyone? I see a bunch of familiar faces, names. Hey, Deirdre. Hey, Amy. Thank you for the lips compliment. I appreciate you. And hi, everyone from all over. That's a great question. So yeah, motivation, I agree with you, is the crux of everything. And it's not just, obviously motivation is a major step in even accessing treatment and wanting to go get treatment, and the effectiveness of treatment. The more motivated you are, the more willing you are to surrender to the ERP or whatever else you're doing, and the more effective treatment will be. So motivation is everything, but motivation is everything still in terms of maintenance and maintaining. And Lizzie Rose, strike a pose. So anyway, but motivation is everything, just in life in general. And that's because for me, I can speak from my personal experience. Generally, my motivation is directly tied to my emotions. So depending on how I'm feeling, that's how motivated I am. And one of the silver linings of just going through an OCD journey and going through, being really sick to getting better, is you learn that you don't have to act in accordance with your feelings, that feelings in regards to OCD don't really matter as much. It's your actions that count. And you can take that concept and move it out of OCD and really just into life in general. You don't have to be feeling great to do really productive stuff. And so sometimes if I'm not feeling good, that may directly correlate to lower motivation, but that doesn't mean that I have to do less stuff. I just have to be willing to do it while not feeling necessarily that great. So I can motivate myself in a variety of ways. Exercise is great. Meditation is great. Having specific goals and routine for the days is great. But motivation for me is really, really key. But I try to keep motivation and emotion separate. It's kind of hard. Motivation, it kind of plays on each other. But if I keep those separate and use motivation and look at values as sort of the dangling carrot for me, that's at least my secret sauce. More good days than bad. That's kind of what I try to implement daily. What about you, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things I talk a lot about is bringing in some of Jeff Bell's work on greater good. And really, when we think about greater good, it's about one of the things Dr. Grayson has always talked a lot about is identifying what OCD has taken away from you, right? What are the things in your life that OCD has stolen, has robbed, whether it's school, relationships, freedom, life, joy, pleasure, it doesn't matter, right? And being able to then take those and turn it into why we're doing the work that we do. And I think the reality is that, Kate, I love your comment that you gotta have your why, right? Like if we're just doing the motions, or we're waking up in the morning and we're doing ERP to do ERP, that's pretty daunting. And there will come a point where it's like, well, I don't want to do ERP anymore. Like, I don't want to keep pushing and feeling uncomfortable, which is what we're telling you to feel. But if you're feeling uncomfortable because of these goals, right? I'm willing to feel uncomfortable right now because I want to have healthy relationships, because I want to be able to maintain my job, because I want these things that I know if I don't do ERP, I won't be able to have. I just think it makes ERP not necessarily easier, but purpose driven, right? And one of the things one of the slogans I started talking about a long time ago is turning your pain into purpose, right? And that shift comes from and turns into motivation, right? Like, we have OCD, we have anxiety, we're going to have good and bad days. We can't necessarily get rid of that. But what we can do is change the way we approach them. We can change the way we look at them, and we can take our pain, our struggles, and turn it into something meaningful, whether it's because of these meaningful goals we have, or whether we're doing advocacy work or we're giving back, right? I think that is critical in the journey of OCD. So let's jump into questions first that were pre-submitted, and then we'll go into other ones. I do want to say two things. Some of these questions that were pre-submitted are not focused on motivation, and so I'm going to ask Chelsea and the Peace of Mind Foundation to move those into the next Live with Liz, and we're going to focus on the pre-submitted ones on motivation, because I know our time is limited, and I want to make sure we get to live questions as well. So first question, Ethan, that would be great for you to answer is, how do I stop feeling like a failure, and why do I have a complete lack of motivation? So when we're just feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling kind of like it's not working, right? How have you had any personal experiences, and how have you pulled yourself out of that?
Yeah, the personal experiences every day. From when I was struggling with OCD before diagnosis, to diagnosis and treatment, to every day afterwards. There's always some sense of inner critic telling me that I'm a failure, that I'm a fraud, that there's no point. Sometimes the voice is louder. The answer, it's a compound. I was gonna say it's one word. It's a compound word. The answer for me to dealing with both fear of failure and lack of motivation is self-compassion. I think self-compassion is everything when it comes to this idea of, what if I fail, or what if I am a failure? What if I'm a terrible person? And I think that for me, continuing to practice a variety of different kinds of self-compassion, along with taking precepts from ERP and really allowing my brain to have its thoughts and to let those thoughts be there. And as comfortable as it is to sit with, an inner critic, or that inner salesperson who constantly says, don't try it, you suck, you're a failure, you're sick, you're mentally, your brain is broke, whatever this guy is saying. And to really just let that voice kind of be there, and just, I notice it in the background, but not, thoughts aren't real, thoughts aren't facts. And to be okay not being okay with that narrative. We tend to listen to that guy like he's a terrible salesman, and yet we're like, yes, you're right, it must be true every time. No matter how many times we disprove this guy or woman, we're always like, yeah, I am. And in terms of motivation, I think self-compassion really ties into motivation beautifully, because when you remove this idea that you have to flog yourself and drive yourself into the ground, you have to be as hard on yourself as possible and all this stuff, and you remove those, self-compassion isn't about going easy on yourself. It's not about not expecting more from yourself. It's accepting yourself of where you are now. You don't have to be satisfied. You can still grow. That was kind of a hard concept for me to understand with self-compassion. But go ahead, Liz.
And I also think everybody who knows me knows I'm like a pretty strict, right, CBT ERP person, but like ACT is a part of what a lot of us do every day in our life, or that we bring into ERP and CBT. And when you think about the title of Stephen Hayes, who really was kind of one of the first people to talk about and speak about ACT, and you think about the title of his book or workbook, it was get out of your mind and into your life, right? And when we think about motivation, the more we try to think and solve and make sure, sometimes it's about just doing, right? And sometimes self-compassion is just getting up and getting out there, right? And not getting so stuck in this like inner critic and solving and understanding and being certain, but instead, like, even though I may not feel great, I'm still going to choose to do this important activity or engage in this value that is critical to me or that's important to me or that needs to happen. And what we find more than not, right, whether it's depression or OCD, is that when you get out and engage in those activities, you tend to feel a little bit better. Doesn't mean we'll feel great. Doesn't mean, as Ethan said, like we feel super confident and we feel like we're just this like amazing, like we might still feel like there's room for improvement, or we might still feel like we're not perfect, which is normal and healthy. But it's about not letting those thoughts take away. I feel like what happens often with motivation, right, is we feel like we're supposed to wake up feeling super motivated. And so when we wake up and we don't feel that way right away, it can choose to kind of snowball and like feed into those thoughts of we don't feel good. And next thing you know, it kind of takes over. Or we can choose to say, hey, I don't feel great. And maybe, as Ethan, as you mentioned, like maybe I'm having these thoughts of feeling like a failure today, but I'm still going to choose to go do purpose-driven activities today. I'm still going to go choose to engage in whatever I need to engage in, or to be self-compassionate to myself. And I know for me, it's interesting, like bringing it back to OCD, is that I often see an overlap, right? Like I was in therapy this morning with my provider and talking to her about how can I see room for growth and acknowledge that without letting OCD take hold. You know, like I know for myself, sometimes I struggle with engaging in self-compassion and giving myself the same amount of flexibility that you should have if perfectionism comes into play, right? I have, for example, like I might ruminate of like, what if I made a mistake with a patient in the past, let's just say, and like, okay, that's normal. Like, do you think any provider never makes a mistake with a patient? Like always does things perfect? No. But how can I let that be a learning opportunity for me and say, okay, what can I learn? How can I grow from that? And how can I move forward? Versus sometimes also OCD latches on and it's like, well, then you can't do anything right. And you shouldn't even be a provider and you must be really bad at what you do. And, you know, should you even be doing it? Are you a fraud? And now all of a sudden, you know, you had what without OCD or anxiety might have been like a normal growth opportunity that's been turned into a trigger in which we can also choose to start engaging in rituals, which makes motivation even worse and lower. Okay, next question. Trying to jump through because not all of these are about motivation. So here's a good question that I think is similar to motivation. How do I help my sister through hard days when I don't physically live in the same city? How can I support her when she's calling me during a meltdown without enabling? And I think this is a really important question that we get all the time from caregivers is, how do I support and motivate my loved one even when they're in the midst of a struggle and insight's probably gone without enabling them? What are your thoughts, Ethan?
I was going to let you start on this one.
Oh, thank you. You know, I think it's about boundary setting and knowing that even though boundaries are really, really difficult, they're often what a lot of us need. And being able to set a boundary to say, you know, I love you and I want to support you and I want to help you, but I don't want to feed your OCD. And I feel like right now you want me to give you answers that are really for your OCD instead of for you. And I want to help you, right? I don't want to help with illness. And being able to, though, come up with that plan together with your provider and their provider so that it's not, you know, you don't want to become the treatment provider where you start doing treatment for them or telling them what to do. But there's ways that you can support and be there and tell them you're going to be there and be there without enabling and turning into a reassurance battle.
Yeah, I love the idea. I think we're scared to communicate for some reason. And I think communication is such a huge aspect of not reassuring, but still supporting, and first outlining, you know, if somebody's calling and they're stressed and they're depressed and they want reassurance, first, you know, setting the stage for why you're not going to reassure. I'm not supporting the person. I'm not supporting your OCD. So that's definitely like number one. I love the idea of communication. And then for me, I like to ask questions. I don't necessarily like to tell people what they should do or how they should feel. You know, I like to, when I talk to people that are suffering or struggling or stuck, I really like to ask them a bunch of questions, such as, what do you want today? What do you want to do today? What would you want to do if you didn't feel this way today? Well, why do you think you can't do it today? And what do you think is stopping you? And I really like asking supportive questions that helps reframe and bring insight and objectivity back to the situation, because then it's not me telling them what to do. It's us collaborating together and helping to come to maybe some answers and solutions that works best for them.
Totally agree. And Kate, I think you should coin the term ERP is just torture without values, because I absolutely love it. I'm just smiling reading it because it's so true, right? Like when we are doing ERP, but it's value based, right? And we're doing it because of these values and goals that we keep in mind, then it's worth the pain because the reward is so huge. But if you're just doing it to go through the motions, right? It's just torturous, and it doesn't make sense.
Kate has what I call a few different true spears. She also said follow the plan and not the mood, which I love.
Look at that. So Laura, I love your comment as well, which is just that when you had ROCD, you crushed the person you cared about the most, and you didn't want to do that again, and that became the catalyst and the motivation. And I think a lot of us actually can look at difficult experiences in our life where we had it was a pivotal moment to choose, you know what, I don't want this to continue to happen. I don't want that to happen again. And that's my motivation, is that I know if I don't address OCD, if I don't do the work that I need to do, it will continue to take away these really important things in my life.
Well, Liz is looking, yeah, for sure. OCD is very sneaky. And it likes to make you think that if you're not paying attention to it or compulsing, that you're being irresponsible, when in fact OCD forces you to or encourages you to be irresponsible to the things that are actually really important in your life. So, I like to kind of frame it that way. Anyway, go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's like, great. It's this, okay, at what cost, right? Like we're trying, one of the things I love that Grayson always says is like, ERP is trying to, OCD is telling you that you have to have certainty, right? Complete certainty for whatever it is that you're triggered with, when really like what it's asking of you, what OCD is asking of you, which is to have certainty, is impossible. Like it's trying to tell you to do the impossible. It's not possible. So you're stuck in a cycle that is never ending because you can't actually get complete certainty. And I think, Ethan, your point that you just brought up is like, as you're stuck in this impossible route searching for certainty, you end up losing all the things that were possible that were really important and meaningful. So like what cost, right? Like what is like, okay, like maybe you can feel better temporarily by doing rituals, but it costs you time, life, relationships, the things that you should be investing in, when instead we're investing in OCD. And it's just so important for us to think about that. And the more we invest in OCD, the more we give in to the thoughts about not getting out of bed, not doing these activities because we're feeling anxious or whatever it may be around it. That's where it wins and motivation continues to decrease. Danielle asked if you have any steps or recommendations for getting her day started with more positivity and more energy. Ethan?
Getting your day started with more positivity and more energy. Sorry, I do better if I see the question. But so I mean, I wouldn't make, yes. I mean, I think basics, diet, exercise, sleep routine, schedule. I think sort of the tangibles that we can do to sort of like regulate and help us. But if we wake up with this feeling of dread and this feeling of, oh my gosh, what do I have to face today? Whether it's work and school or just simply like, I don't want to face my OCD, which was me and Liz so many different times. Like, I don't want to wake up because that means I have to deal with the thoughts and all that stuff, then again, this comes back to values and self-compassion, which is, what am I missing out? What am I losing? Why do I want to resist OCD and not compulse and not necessarily make it about the feelings? And also, this comes back to motivation. Oh, that's what we're talking about. But this comes back to what we were saying earlier, which is, we have this need to wait until we feel right. Like we just want to feel right, and then it's time to do it, right? And with ERP, and as Liz was saying, ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, with motivation is very important, and we want to work on it. But sometimes, like, move the body and the mind will follow kind of thing, which is, even if you don't feel right, it's okay to still get up and do, and then the motivation will come. So, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling unmotivated, that doesn't mean that you're physically unable to do the things that are important to you. So, but also reward yourself. Like you talked about ways to motivate yourself. So we want to get motivated. We want to get energetic. What are things you can do during the day that excite you? What are value-driven things during the day? Can you talk to somebody? Is there a meal that you really like? Can you place rewards throughout the day? Even if they're just moments, can you take 5 minutes, every couple of hours to just breathe and have some peaceful time to yourself? I think a reward system is really helpful as well. Liz, what do you think?
I love it. And I was just thinking, like, as you were saying this, that, motivation isn't given, it's earned. And I think that's a hard concept for a lot of us to think about, is like we often think it's just given, like we should just wake up and feel motivated, or that, if we don't feel motivated, something's wrong. When really, I think what Ethan is talking about is that motivation comes with doing, and it comes with choosing to act a certain way, right? When you think about like a walking or exercise, healthy lifestyle regimen, like you're not motivated to engage in it at the beginning. It's once you get going and you start feeling better and you start seeing that, like, oh, this changes my mind frame, or like getting outside and going on a walk makes me feel better or more mindful, that then you're motivated to keep doing it. And I think a lot of times, like it goes into some other questions where people have said like, oh, I don't feel motivated to do homework and it just feels like overwhelming and I just don't. But the reality is like, we're not going to feel motivated the more we stop and think, or we just want to feel, right? The motivation comes from completing it and getting the homework done, and then having free time to do other things, or feeling good about the accomplishment and then being motivated to do it in the future. And so I just love it. I love, Ethan, your kind of the concept that the values, the motivation, like those become clear and become apparent once you choose to start doing things that would increase it. But when we stay in bed, right, even though sometimes that might feel like it's not a choice, it is a choice, right? It may feel like the right choice in the moment, but there's motivation isn't going to come from just being and just expecting it to show up. It's something we have to work hard for. And I think that's an interesting concept, right, that we don't always talk about. I think a lot of times we just think, well, you should be motivated to do treatment because don't you want a better life? It's like, well, of course I do, but like, why would I be motivated to feel uncomfortable, which is what treatment is. But once you start doing it and you see how it works and you kind of buy into it, then of course you're motivated to continue it because that life you're working for actually seems feasible, where before it seemed so far stretched.
And also, just to quickly dovetail, yeah, inertia breeds motivation. And Liz nailed it on the head. It's like exercising. It's like nobody wants to exercise starting off. But when you start seeing the results, losing weight, feeling more energy. But the other thing is, if you're not motivated because your day seems overwhelming, break down your day, right? So go from, oh my God, I have all this stuff to do today. What do I have to do this hour? What do I have to, okay, I need to shower, get dressed, and brush my teeth. So that's my goal for right now, is let me get to that. And literally, and I've broken things down into half hours, 15 minutes. I've had really hard days and just been like, let me get through this next 10 minutes and then I'll worry about the next 10 minutes. So sometimes breaking things down just into more manageable bites is really helpful.
Yeah, Stacy mentioned this. She said, for instance, you can climb stairs with your right foot, stop, take a deep breath, and then your left foot. And just breaking things down can be really helpful, right? To kind of, actions can be complete, but they can be broken down. But as Ethan mentioned, like if we wake up and it's okay, I want to have a day where I do all these things that are actually like probably not even feasible to get them all done, you're already setting yourself up to have kind of a pretty challenging, difficult day, versus can you break it down to challenging but obtainable goals that make sense. And I want to go up to Mel's question at 11:41 a.m. And Mel, you talked about OCD getting in the way, and then a lot of times being spent writing lists and trying to decide on the next task and how to get going when you have hundreds of next actions because you feel like you don't know where to start. And what I'll say is that exactly what Ethan and I are talking about, which is that when like you're letting OCD kind of control the day, right? You're letting OCD choose like the list making and those impossible tasks and the rigor of all of them that needs to be done. That's letting OCD dictate, or anxiety dictate, what the day should look like. And then it becomes overwhelming because it doesn't even feel possible. And so instead, could you set one or two goals that aren't perfectionism based, aren't OCD based, if that's what's going on? But as Ethan mentioned, the goal might be like, make it to the grocery store, go get gas in my car today, right? Whatever it is, but what are feasible goals that you can get going and do and feel good about, versus when our goals are so rigorous and so long that they're actually quite impossible, we're setting ourselves up to not feel accomplished, even if we do some really amazing things. You know, one of the quotes that is often used is like, it's a great day to do hard things. And the reality and what we find is that sometimes if we choose to do anything, that's a hard thing. And that's an accomplishment. And this is where what Ethan talked about earlier, the self-compassion is recognizing that anything we do is actually a blessing and a hard thing we chose to do, in the sense that for me, I really struggle to slow down. But when I take a day and I slow down, I have to be really proud of myself for doing that, because even that OCD or things can come in if I feel guilty or I didn't do enough or was I productive, whatever might come in, being able to say, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but like, this is what I needed. And that's where that self-compassion piece is so critical when we think about motivation and we think about goal setting, because they go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And Mel, I would also ask the question, who's making the rules that you have hundreds of actions to do? Is that your OCD or is that you? And I think that, you know, you don't need an OCD to overwhelm yourself and feeling like I have all this stuff to do and I have to get it done now. You know, prioritizing is helpful. Breaking things down, as you said, is helpful. You know, all the things. But I would also look at, like, you know, do you really have to do all those things today? And if not, you know, what do you actually have to do? What can wait? And what can really wait?
Right. Totally agree. So, and when I read through the comments, we've answered a lot of them. And really, I think what it comes down to is figuring out, like, how do you motivate yourself every day? Motivation isn't given, right? We don't always wake up feeling motivated, but we can make choices and we can engage in actions that can actually create motivation, not just throughout our day, but motivation that sticks. And I think that's the takeaway. That's something I just learned from today, and that I know that it just helped remind me that, like, oh wow, you know, motivation is something you fight for. And the more you fight for it, the more it will be present. But again, the more we get stuck in the thoughts and trying to be certain or trying to feel a certain way or getting upset if we don't feel a certain way or we don't feel really good, right? That's when the opportunity for motivation to be present falls apart. And it's our job to search for it and make it come there. Final thoughts on motivation for you, Ethan, and how you continue to have it every day now.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you've said. And I think like I said, I continue to just push forward. I think I also wanted to bring up, it's a weird time right now, and it's still a weird time. And yes, things are getting back to normal, but like, this is also where self-compassion comes in, and recognizing that not everything we go through is OCD. Not everything that we go through, you know, is, yes, anxiety, but not an anxiety disorder. We are dealing with unprecedented times where there's just a weird feeling for a lot of people going out and doing stuff. And our schedules and routines for many people are different and changed, and we're working from, lots of people can't work from work from home because there's a lot of stuff to do. You know, that's why they go to an office, because it's much easier to be motivated when you're working with other people that are working. So we also have to recognize the circumstances that we're in right now, that a lot of our routines are differently. It's like, and, you know, for me, when I'm working on a set, I'm super energized and there's buzz and there's energy and you're feeding off everybody. And I'm in a bedroom right now, you know, it's not super exciting in here. So I also think we have to be, like, aware and compassionate of what everyone is going through right now, and not necessarily always blame it on our mental illness.
Yeah. And I think, you know, Ethan, I think that's critical, is that right now, I think a lot of us, OCD or not, right? People are like, well, what is there to be motivated for? Like, what do I have to look forward to? Because often motivation comes from things you're excited about, right? Things you're looking forward to. Like, I'm motivated to do this ERP. I'm motivated to go to work because I want this sort of life for myself, or I want this thing that if I don't do it, it'll take away. And right now it's like, well, what can I do? Right? Like, you can't often, all of life has tremendously switched, right? In the sense that, like, COVID has interrupted so many things that you previously might have been looking forward to that now you can't even necessarily look forward to. And so I think the takeaway from today is that motivation can always be found. And I think that's what's most important, is that sometimes the more stuck we are, the less visible it becomes. But motivation is always one step away. And sometimes it's the littlest steps that you take that will make it more clear, more visible, and more recognizable. And so you have to choose to take those steps, and you have to be willing to do the little things and be proud of yourself, recognize them, acknowledge them so that the bigger things can become even more visible and more apparent for why you're doing the work that you do.
Beautifully said. Yeah, action helps you find motivation, and you don't need to be motivated to act. So when you start acting, like Liz said, just one step at a time, one literal step at a time, start moving and you'll find the motivation, and then it just becomes exponential from there.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. Ethan, I love having you on. You are like a family member to me, and so it's so good to see you. And for everybody here who came, thank you guys. It was an incredible discussion today. I loved being back on a live event, so I'm hoping Ethan and I will start doing these more regularly. And one of the things we'd love to know, email us at info@peaceofmind.com, is what do you want from us? What would be helpful? What would you love to hear maybe Ethan and I talking about together, maybe us doing individually, maybe other guests, so that we can make sure we tailor webinars, talks, and events to you guys.
And I just want to, can I pitch one thing, Liz?
Please.
Sorry. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on the IOCDF and Peace of Mind platforms, we'll be doing a religious scrupulosity town hall from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We have a great panel. This is volume 2. So if you're interested in a religious group, if you struggle with religious scrupulosity, tomorrow, 7 p.m., Facebook, YouTube, Peace of Mind, IOCDF. See you there.
Please join. As always, love you guys. Great to see everybody. We look forward to continuing to stay connected and continue our amazing OCD community. Help and hope are